All right, we'll get you to this. More on the war.
But if Iran is wise, they will cut a deal. President Trump doesn't bluff and he does not back down. President Trump will make a deal he is willing. And the terms of the deal are known to them. If Iran is not willing, then the United States War Department will continue with even more intensity.
President Trump still pushing for diplomacy with Iran, citing negotiations with the country's parliamentary speaker. That Iranian official is now pushing back and denying talks with the U.S. So joining us now is anchor of Special Report, Bret Baier, who might be able to give us a little bit more detail. Over to you, sir.
Hey, Bill and Dana, good morning. I talked to President Trump late last night. He says these negotiations are continuing. They are starting. They are, he says there's progress being made, but they are plowing forward with their targets. He thinks Iran should make a deal. I had the Pakistani ambassador on last night on Special Report. They are trying to facilitate and host these talks. And I was trying to nail him down about who they're talking to and what the process is. He didn't say it on the interview, but afterwards said it has been very difficult because there is confusion on the ground in Iran about who holds the power, who has the juice to make the deal. The president told me last night that they are talking. Yet there is obviously missiles. There are missiles still being fired. There was a tanker attacked last night in the Strait of Hormuz. There is some frustration in the administration and from the president directly that other allies are not jumping in on this coalition to protect the strait. So I expect to see some developments on that front in coming days. But in the meantime, they're still going to take out targets and still going to try to talk.
It was about 4 hours ago he put out a truth, essentially said, learn how to fight, talking to our partners in Europe, assuming. In the meantime, with regard to your conversation with the ambassador from Pakistan, it appeared after the Israelis took out the Hamas leadership in Gaza that they too had a very difficult time trying to communicate messages to those that were going to lead the 20 million people trying to live in Gaza. And there's just a parallel situation now, Bret. I don't know which way that is resolved, by way of the State Department or otherwise, but I don't know if that came up in your conversation.
Well, it did. And there is a communication issue on the ground, as you can imagine. The IRGC being taken out time and again by both Israeli and U.S. strikes. The command and control centers being taken out, and the ability to communicate with different elements. The Navy and the Air Force largely taken out. So the strategic strikes, and you look at all the people who have been taken out leadership-wise, you can imagine the shuffle to say, okay, who's now got the ball? Who is holding the baton to make the deal? And I think that's part of the issue that they're seeing on the ground.
It's interesting, too, because when you look at that, all of those characters that we just showed you, the eliminated ones, they're all of the same generation. I want to play for you from Congressman Jim Himes. He believes that the president is not telling the truth about talks.
Oh, I think he's flat out lying. Last Sunday when he was told, and by the way, we're in exactly the same position today, oil prices now $112 a barrel and, futures in the stock market down 2%. Last Sunday, he realized, oh my God, I've got a financial cataclysm on Monday. So he just made it up that they're in negotiations with the Iranians.
You talked to the president, you just talked about in the talks. I'm curious about how he might respond, how the president might respond to that, but also about the politics of how all of this is going.
Yeah, well, first of all, the president insists it's happening. Steve Witkoff insists it's happening. Jared Kushner insists it's happening. I think you can say it's happening on some level. Whether the person they're dealing with, and it was the head of the parliament that he confirmed the other day, has the power to speak for the IRGC and the other leadership. We don't even know the status of the Ayatollah, the new one, and we hear multiple reports about him. I think there's just a real question about communication. And as far as timeline, I know that there's a sense that they're hoping that the 4 weeks, 6 weeks is in the timeline of wrapping this thing up. But Iran's regime is not going to go quietly into the night. And I think that there is a concern in the Gulf Arab allies especially that the U.S. picks up and goes and suddenly they're holding the bag at the end.
Yeah. Just one last thing here. I was talking with Dana this before the sun came up this morning. There was a note that went out by the RGC globally that they had taken out 200 U.S. service members in the Gulf states, and there's nothing to verify or lock that down at all to even suggest that they were close. Apparently they said they hit an Israeli vessel. Just not true. At other times they put out things that do turn out to be true. But when it comes to this question as the central command and leadership in Iran today, you wonder, and Pete Hegs has said in the last 24 hours that the fewest number of missiles have been launched from Iran since the start of the war 30 days ago. How many of these are taking a command, and how many of these are lone wolves? And I think it's a complicated thing to answer, Brett. I don't know what they would say in Washington about that.
I agree. And I think that, listen, Iran has been planning for this for a long time. So there may have been processes that if this guy gets taken out, it goes down the chain and people step up. But there is confusion on the ground. We can report that 100%. And the question is, how much stuff do they have? How many missiles, cruise missiles, drones? By all accounts, it's still significant. And that's why the military has 200 dynamic targets. In other words, hovering over Iran, they change and do a new target based on new intelligence. That's pretty incredible if you think about it in one night.
They called them dynamic strikes today. 200 from last night alone. Thank you, Brett. We'll see you at 6 o'clock.
See you. I'll see you at 5:59:59.
I love those handovers.
Okay. Thank you. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.